So this episode of the podcast was with Big Mike Salbro, who was a fascinating individual, super cool guy. He is an Australian Aboriginal who grew up in Sweden. And it makes him one of the very few people to ever have done that. The Swedish is his first language, English is his second. He has a tragic and very interesting story. He's one of the last people to be a victim of the stolen generation. He was taken from his mother when he was just 3 months old and was eventually adopted by a lovely Swedish woman with her husband, and he ended up in Sweden. Grew up in Sweden, is now a social worker back in Brisbane, heavily involved within the indigenous community of Queensland, and such a cool guy. I had such a good time talking with him. He's a legend. And in this chat, we just sort of go over his story, basically, and it is it's not very linear. We go down lots of tangents, but if you're into something like that, then it's going to be perfect for you. But we basically trace Mike's story. As we're tracing down the story, we touch on the different things that is sort of relevant and comes to mind, I guess. I trust that there's going to be a lot of sort of Australians living in Sweden who actually might end up listening to this. So if that's you, cheers for watching. It's very cool. It's cool that we've managed to find our way down to this niche of the infinitely distributed internet. I'm writing a lot online and making a lot of podcasts. If you're interested, have a look at it. It's all in the descriptions in the notes, so you'll see it there. And not to delay, what is Mike's fascinating story? Here is Mike Salbro. All right, well, Mike, what a thrill it is to have you, mate. So it's your nighttime. You've just knocked off from work. It's my morning over here. I'm in your I don't know, what would you call it? Not your country of birth, but at least maybe the country of your upbringing. I'm in Sweden, and you're in Brisbane, Australia. So a couple of weeks ago, there was a rather viral news story that sort of came out about this young Aboriginal boy who grew up in Sweden, and not only Sweden, but also the north of Sweden. And some of the photos were, just amazing. This just tall, lanky Aboriginal boy amongst all the Swedes with the blonde hair and the blue eyes. And, it made for a wonderful story. So I was hoping you could just tell us about it, because it is magnificent.
Yeah, sure. I'm just going to say a quick introduction in Swedish. Hej, hur mår ni allihopa? Hoppas ni har det bra där hemma i Sverige. Jag saknar Sverige väldigt mycket och ska förhoppningsvis komma hem när covid har slutat och alla gränserna har öppnat igen. Så tack så mycket, tack. Och ja visst, let's begin.
Wow, nice one, mate. You're 100%, you have to be, right, in like the history of Aboriginal people, the first to speak Swedish. That's quite cool, I think.
Oh, look, back in the 80s, yeah. Look, I know of a few indigenous people that actually speak Swedish. And actually has lived in Sweden, not at the time that I lived there, because I lived there in the early 80s and grew up there all the way to the 2000. Yeah, I left Sweden in 99. Mm-hmm. So yeah, first and foremost, thank you so much, Ryan, for reaching out. There was, wow, it blew my mind when I got that email from you, message from you, and like, wow, all the way from Sweden. So I thought, look, I have to do it. It's, it's part of me. Sweden's always going to be part of me.
Yeah.
No matter where I go. And I always, that question you just asked before, look, Sweden is always going to be my home. I want to take my kids back to Sweden and show them where I grew up, all the schools and daycares and high schools and workplaces, and just so my kids can have a sense of what it was like. Mm-hmm. So, and at the moment, I've been teaching them Swedish for a few years now, which is slowly getting there. The attention span is not as they're doing a lot better than what I did back in those days. So yeah. So I guess, starting off.
Start from the top.
Born in a community called Sherberg. Sherberg is a Aboriginal reserve, like they say in America, where the Indians were put into. In Australia, we call them missions, and that comes from missionaries who came from overseas to Australia. and they came into these reserves and preached the Bible or Catholic beliefs or the Christian beliefs. So they replaced our boomerangs and spears with the Bible, and said, look, that is the devil worship. You should not practice your culture. You should not talk your language. We need you, instead of walking around with lap and spears and whatnot, we're going to dress you up so you can look like us. So that happened, unfortunately. And obviously there was a few people a few of my people who did not like the idea and still secretly lived our way, which we have done for thousands of many, over 140,000 years. The new research has come up that there was a bone or artifact is now 140,000 years in Australia. We're not talking, because I was thinking probably you heard 40,000 years, but add an extra 100,000, there was a new,
Wild, eh? I mean, don't people sort of throw around the idea that the indigenous people to Australia could be like the oldest humans?
Well, we are actually the oldest living culture in the world. We have thrived and survived
wild,
two ice ages. Ice ages we have survived. Like, and I'm thinking, wow, well, I would have wanted to live back then with the big saber-tooth cell, tigers and the big woolly mammoths, the mammoths and the, oh God, just imagine those animals back then, like,
unreal.
Here am I jumping off a little spider huntsman.
Didn't we have like cassowaries? This is now maybe 100,000 more years ago, but cassowaries that were like 2 or 3 times the size, like a legit predator. You're fucked if you're going to come into the face of one of these guys.
Oh yeah, they would have been size of a 10-story building. They were massive.
Yeah,
maybe not 10, but
maybe
big.
not 10.
Maybe half 5. Yeah, like and the cassowaries now they're still massive.
Yeah.
And
they'll still
today,
hurt you, yeah.
Oh shit, yeah.
They chased my mum up a tree back in the day.
Really?
Yeah. She grew up in Macquarie, and her and her mates were just walking down to the beach, and there was this cassowary, and it decided to go after my mum, and she escaped it by running up a tree. But they can hurt you, right? I mean, their head is some sort of just dense bone, right? And yeah,
that's right.
Yeah. But go on. You were saying, so you were born in the late 70s into the Sherberg missionary, and this is a part of the stolen generation.
That is correct. So a lot of people not taught in school, but a lot of people thought that stolen generation only happened in the early 1900s. But I am a living proof that it still happened in the late 70s. 1979, I'm 42. I turned 42 in May. So it still happened in the late 70s. Wow. And obviously no one knew because it was all shoved under a carpet and it was all hush-hush. No one was allowed to know because it was illegal what they did.
Could you explain how, because I also was under the impression that the stolen generation was from the early 1900s. So how did they get away with it? Like, how did it actually work that you find yourself in this missionary having been taken away from your family?
Oh, look, because of the, have you heard of the apartheid?
In South Africa?
Yep.
Yeah.
Do you know who invented it?
No.
Queensland government.
Is that a fact?
So the biggest fact, you Google it.
Wow.
So the South Africans came over to Queensland and they had a wander around, a bit of a tourist trip around Queensland, and they said, well, hang on, we actually like how you guys control the black people. How about we going to adopt that in South Africa? So Queensland came up with the apartheid. And there was an act about the heroin, the opium act back in those days where the slave owners can pay my people, the workers, farmers, by opium. They were not allowed to deal or sell ourselves, but just as long as the slave owner had the certificate, then he can purchase opium and give it to his workers instead of money. That's where the stolen wages comes into play, where a lot of my grandfather, he was not paid in money. He was paid by rations, sugar, flour, milk, eggs, instead of money. So,
it's impossible to get a leg up when you're being paid in condiments, or it's impossible to generate a wealth or earn an asset or anything. Yeah,
exactly, and that's why unfortunately you see a lot of our mob are not in a financial situation where we can afford to buy a house or buy things, good stuff, because we were never taught that stuff back then. Generations, monkey see, monkey do. Well, no one taught me how to handle money or how to save, or because we never had that. My grandfather never had money to save because he was paid in rations, bread, sugar, oat. So how could we possibly learn back then how to handle money when we were not given money?
Yeah,
so
it's not something that is like inherent, right? You have to be taught from either your parents or at school the idea of compounding wealth, or just taking a little bit of money and realizing that it could maybe be worth more in the future. Like, I suppose maybe myself, I take it for granted that that's like an obvious idea, but you have to realize you were taught it, and as you say, if there's, entire like communities of not just Aboriginals, but, young white Australians as well, who just don't know the first thing about any sort of wealth accumulation or like the importance of a salary, not just being on like part-time. Like I don't know, it's something which actually needs to be educated. It's not something that's inherent to us, understanding how money kind of works.
Definitely, and as you said, it's the education system is lacking these independent living skills that we learn later after high school. So, obviously they expect us parents to teach our kids. Well, unfortunately, we don't have as much time to do that now. Back in the 70s and 80s, and the 60s, we had a lot of time. The parents had a lot of time with their kids. Now we've got to work our asses off, just to make sure we have a roof overhead and bills paid, and, little time that we have, and which makes me talk about COVID. Well, COVID's a shit, but thanks to COVID, we get to spend more time with our family, with our kids. So I'm one of those persons who like to take the good out of the bad, and take, well, hey,
you love COVID.
Well, COVID's actually making me not work as much and spend time more with my kids.
Yeah.
So I'm happy. My kids are happy. My bills are not happy. But yeah, going back to the mission now. So Sherberg has been around for 130 years. So what happened back in those days, the missionaries would go around Queensland and pick and take, well, hang on, I want that, the slave owners would then sell them off and say, right, you can have him for a couple of pences or pennies or whatever the currency was back then. And then they would take him back to these reserves and then work, maybe cotton picking, railway, farming, and whatnot. And then, like Sherberg, from 140 years ago, now I think we have about 3,000 living in Sherberg. So Sherberg is one of the, I do believe, one of Queensland's biggest reserves. It's a place where a lot of my ancestors were put in, where they were not allowed to leave unless they got permission from the senior sergeant or the slave owner. So for my great-great-grandfather to go to Mergen, the next town, to get rations, he needed to seek permission, a permit slip, to get that signed from the senior sergeant. And if he didn't, then and if he went, he would get shot on sight, or 50 lashes, or placed in a tin shack for 30 days, or without food, just water.
Wow.
Maybe
And
not
that, and
even
that was your grandfather's generation, which is the early 1900s.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And yeah, like I was lucky I got to sit down and talk to my grandfather about this stuff before he passed away in early 2000. So yeah, I was born 27th of May 1979, which was a Sunday. I was only in my mum's care for about 3 months, and then the government came in and took me away. There was no reason at all. They said, look, we're going to take your son away. No explanations, no ifs, no buts. Police rocked up on the door as well. So, probably at gunpoint. I wouldn't be surprised. And, yeah, it was... When I look back at it, it's... How could that even happen? Like, what gives them to right? What gives them the right to come into someone's community, someone's home, and get maybe gunpoint? I'm not gonna, I'm not surprised. To just say, well, we're taking your child. You have no say whatsoever. And I'm trying to think, trying to really put myself in my mum's shoes, like what was going through her head, the pain, the suffering, the tears, sleepless nights. It's, and wondering, where's my child, not knowing that I was thousands of miles away in a different country. She
When you were 3 months old as well, so a tiny baby.
Yeah. Oh, look, not tiny. I was 14-pounder. That's what I call a Big Mike. 14 pounds.
But still, like, I mean, the most sort of important nurturing, the first year, right, between the mother and the son or the child. Like, so it's obviously just an unjustifiable thing to do by any measure. But did they at least say to your mother, like, did they give an explanation, or is this under the, is this like a hangover from the stolen generation? Like, it was still this sort of covert attempt to raise Mike as a white man rather than as an Aboriginal.
Well, yeah, yes, because Sherberg back in those days was still considered a ghetto, a slum, the worst of the worst places in the world. And
really, could you describe to us where it is in Queensland?
Okay, so Sherberg, so Brisbane. If you drive 4 hours northwest from Brisbane, so that'll be the east coast of Australia. 4 hours inland northwest, and it's a small community, very country town, beautiful country. So you can go right inland, or you can go all the way up to Gympie. I don't know if you know Queensland much.
I should know it better, but I can orientate from Macquarie through to Brisbane. Beyond that, and Claremont. My cousins live in Claremont.
Oh, okay, yeah. So Gympie's probably where they have the big Gympie muster. I think that's about 2 hours drive up along the coast, sunny coast. I think it's like 1 hour from the Sunshine Coast up, and then you drive in for another hour and 40 minutes. So Sherberg was a small community. Now it's about 3,000 population. And look, back in the days, boxing was our thing. So there was good old boxing tent matches, them days. So a lot of my grandfathers were made out of men. Yeah. Yep. A lot of my grandfather's brothers and cousins were made out of, initiated from a boy to a man, early days.
Okay,
back then.
yeah. Is that sorry to keep sidetracking you, and
You're
forgive me
right.
if it's on a tangent. I mean, we haven't even gotten to Sweden yet, but but like
You're right.
um you say like a bit of an initiation. Is this just between you guys, or is that also almost an indigenous tradition as well? There is like to transition from a boy to a man, you have to be in a fight, almost something like that.
Oh, look, in our way, initiation is a sacred ritual ceremony that young boys as young as 10 to 15 will go to I can't say too much because it's in our way we call it men's business and women are not allowed to know about it. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about it. Because it's a sacred ritual ceremony
Yeah,
for
sure,
us
sure.
men. So yeah, young boys get to follow the older men or which is the community leaders or elders, and they get taken to a sacred spot, wherever, and then there's heaps of things happening, and yeah, it's a ceremony that goes from 3 months to maybe a year. But yeah, it's something. It's very sacred, and obviously it's hard because I can't really talk much about
Yeah,
it.
yeah, sure. No,
Because
don't say
yeah,
anything you can't say. But
yeah,
maybe with your own boys, have they had that experience? Are they at the age?
no, they are at their age, so I have to now take him back to Tony Creek, which
Yeah.
is another 4 hours from Mount Isa, up north in Northern
Okay.
Territory.
Out there. The
Yeah,
outback.
proper red
Yeah.
dirt, you know.
Yeah.
The long road trains of five, what do you call
Uh-huh.
it? Five trailers on the back. Yeah, so back to Tony Creek, so I've got to take him back there, which means that they have to miss out on school for a few weeks or a few months, depending on what it looks like when we get there. But it's definitely, look, they don't have to do it, but, and this is what my grandfather told me, he said, Mike, you don't have to do it, but it's in your best interest. Because this has been with us for generations, for centuries, and to be part of it. When I went through it, I could feel it felt like a real privilege that
Yeah.
I've now been part of something that's been around for hundreds of thousands of years.
And
You know,
and just to put a name to it, are you talking about walkabout? Or is
yeah,
that separate?
some can call it walkabout. Yeah, I'm gonna
Okay.
go walkabout, but walkabout can be well, I'm going to out bush and go out bush and heal and
So
just
it
see
doesn't
different.
refer to this specific
No,
experience. No, okay.
if we're gonna be technical, then the correct word would be initiation, men's
Okay.
business.
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
And
So
will you be the one guiding your boys, or will elders from the community you're a part of be the one that guide them?
yeah, the elders from the community will guide him because it's not my country, and it'll be disrespectful for me to come in and step in and take over because it's not my country, and not my community. So, respectfully and culturally, I have to follow cultural protocols, or I will get in trouble.
Sure.
Back in the days, if I didn't follow cultural protocols, you could either get speared, or gutted, stuff. Yeah, take all your intestines out, fill it up with rocks, sew it up, chuck you in the river, or yeah. So
Yeah.
it
Well,
was
let's avoid that happening.
let's avoid that. So respectfully, I will just take him up and then
Yeah.
hand him over to the community. Here's my boys. Do what you got to do, and then I will be part of it. Can't tell you how, what that looks like because of but I will be there
Yeah.
throughout the whole process.
Cool. Do they want to
Yeah.
do it? You said like they don't have to if they don't want to. Do they express an interest in it?
I haven't told him yet. I haven't told him.
Okay, right
but
on.
I'm just going to drop the bomb.
So you're
Yeah,
just sort of feeling them out from a distance, whether this is going to be something they're going to be into.
yeah. Look, it's going to be something I'm going to push for
Hmm.
because it's a life. You know, it's what do you call it? It's part of us. You know, it's like
I
the
imagine it's like it's a very important like thing to do that can continue your cultural traditions. You know,
exactly
like
what's the word? A rite of passage? No.
well, I mean that is the transition from boy to man, the rite of passage, or
Yeah,
to go on an experience to transform. Like that's definitely a rite of passage.
that's it. You know, and it's like the Muslims, they have to go to Mecca to
Hmm.
walk around the big. I mean, they don't have to, but spiritually,
Yeah,
and
I think every Muslim in their life has to do that hike, that trek, that
yeah,
that pilgrimage. Exactly. That's the
yeah,
word. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Um.
that's right.
So, just to bring us back to the timeline, Mike, you've just been forcefully taken from your mother, 3 months
Yep,
old, young
three
boy.
months old, very young boy. Child safety put me into a Christian home where there were other foster children. I'm not sure if there were black and white kids. All I know is that when my parents, excuse me, when my parents adopted me, my Swedish parents, when they came to the foster home, they then said to my old man told me that when they picked me up, I was very undernourished. My nappies hasn't been changed for days, or reeked. Very not very what do you call it? Neglected.
No, it's so fucked.
Oh, look, it was a dog was treated better than I was, and what my people was a dog.
Mm,
You know,
mm.
it's hard because I'm trying to get people to understand what it was like. I wasn't living it back then, but I'm trying to get people to understand because a lot of people, when it comes to Australia Day, 24th of or what Australia Day, what is the date?
26th January.
26th of January. A lot of people say, "Oh, get over it, get over it." Well, hang on. How can we get over something that you guys are trying to shove under the carpet and trying to neglect and not help us with the healing process?
Mm.
Well, how about you guys get over Anzac Day? Oh, shut.
Yeah.
No comment.
Yeah.
Well, hang on. You're talking about get over the past. Well, get over Anzac Day then. You know, that's the same thing. You know, and if we're going to talk about Anzac Day, a lot of our ancestors were not allowed to come back to Australia. There's still indigenous people in South Africa who were not allowed to travel back to Australia.
Really.
When some of the diggers came back to Australia, they were not allowed to sit with their white digger mates in the same bar. They had to sit in the black section.
Mm.
You know, how
Yeah.
fucked up is that?
It's fucked up, actually. Like the outside of Australia, people don't fully understand the like the racism and the atrocities that separated the English that came to Australia and the Aboriginals that were already here. Like it is as, at least from my understanding of how different cultures throughout the world have clashed, it is as racist and as bad as it's manifested anywhere. You know, like you just giving many examples, but fighting for Australia and then not being let back in. It's so woefully atrocious. It's just like you can't really put proper words to it except for just like disdain for the people who make these decisions. You know,
Exactly.
and I mean, obviously, I mean, and we will get to this, but now with your work that you do now, I suppose you're very close to these issues even more so, and you can probably at the end tell us a little bit about what it's like in 2020,
Yep.
because I imagine like it is a improvement, right? But it's certainly
Oh,
not.
definitely.
It's
Definitely.
certainly not where we'd like it to be.
No.
But okay, so you were saying yes, your Swedish mother has come through and found you in this state in the foster home, and she decides to adopt you. Amazing.
So yeah,
I mean, this woman sounds like such an incredible person, you know.
yeah, brother. You know, she couldn't have kids. So what happened was my mum and dad, Inga and Ingemar Salbro. So I still have their surname. I still use it. And my kids have the same surname, the Swedish surname.
Nice.
So yeah, they came and they picked me up, and look, they just took care of me. You know, mum and dad were great. The only thing that wasn't great is that dad was a bit of a pisshead. He was a hard worker. He's a sparky. You know, he had his own business in the back shed. Worked very hard. You know, never took a sickie. And was a real true blue Aussie, hard-working, you know, and then after work, go next door to the pub in Goodna and just had a few too many schooners that would come home and, you know, not treat my mum respectfully, you know, and then because of the alcohol, he turned to a different person. So most nights out of the week, we would have to run across the horse paddock and hide and seek shelter at our other Scandinavian mates who lived across on the other side of the horse paddock. So Mum would tell us, look, told my big brother Thomas, take your little brother Michael and run across to such and stay there until I ring you guys. And sometimes she wouldn't ring until the next day. And that was, you know, we were sheltered and we didn't know too much, or few times we actually saw Dad, you know, punch Mum, give her a punch up, and after a few years, I think when I was 4 or 5, she finally had enough and decided to pack her bags and take me and my brother Thomas to Sweden. So we ended up in Stockholm. At her sister's place in Solna.
Okay.
Solna, yeah.
Nice. Yeah. I was just there the other day, actually.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Hang on. Is that where the Globen still is?
Globen? That's still on... No, Globen's a little bit further south. Solna's just north of... if Gamla Stan's the centre of Stockholm... It's still north of Kungsholmen, up there in Solna, and then Globen's just south of Södermalm.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, that always fascinated me. It looked like a big golf ball.
I know, it's funny you say that. I actually, maybe it's the Australian in us. I make a big deal about it whenever I see it as well. I'm just like, the Globen, you know, I mean, just to take the piss, because you're right, it's this giant fucking dome that just sits above the city. Like, it makes you question what the hell, like, who designed this thing and decided to put it there. But yes, so you're up in Solna. So just to make sure the timeline is totally filled in, you have been adopted from the foster care. You lived in Australia for a couple of years, and when your mother decided to leave your father, she took you and your brother, you say, who you should also introduce, and you moved to Stockholm.
Yeah, so me and Thomas were the only 2 kids who were adopted by Inga and Ingemar. So, I'm pretty sure I was 5 and he was 4 years older, so he would have been 9. Yep, so he's born 1976. So we arrived in Arlanda, and I think it was just snowing, just started to snow. I think it was like August.
Oh, so that must have been the first time you'd seen it, yeah.
Yes, I think it was, cool. Autumn. So the snow just started, coming down, and I jumped out of the plane, and I'm seeing all these slush puppies everywhere. I'm like, a big pile of slush puppies. And I dove in, I grabbed a handful, and I started eating, and Mum gave me a big right one to the back of my neck. Like, don't you dare eat that, that's yucky, that's disgusting. I said, Mum, it's slush puppies everywhere. I mean, what kid doesn't love slush puppies, right?
Yeah.
Slurpees, I think it's called now.
Yeah, you just got the
So
nice, the dirt flavored tarmac slushies.
yeah, right. So we moved to Auntie Bibi in Swana. Stayed there for a few years. Me, Thomas, and Mum, and then so Auntie Bibi and her husband and their two children lived there. So it was a full house. So what would that be? 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7 of us in the house in Swana. And then I do say that Mum, wanted her own house, so we moved to inland, a place called Eskilstuna,
Okay.
which is not far from Västerås, and that's where Mum and Auntie Bibi's parents lived. My grandfather and grandmother, Bertil och Anna-Greta Pettersson. So we moved in with my grandparents, stayed there for a bit, and then Mum got a job at the hospital as a cleaner. So she worked a lot of afternoons and night shifts. And I started daycare and whatnot. And Thomas was in school, grade 4, 5, I think. Grade 4. So that would be a lågstadiet, which is what do you call it in Australia? The lower grades, yeah. So it would have been like
kindergarten or preschool.
I was in preschool. Thomas was in
Primary school.
Primary, yeah. Primary, that's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah.
In Eskilstuna, yeah. So we was living in Eskilstuna. And then Mum finally got approved for a house. So we just moved across the road. Because in Sweden, you don't have houses. The only time you see houses is in the rich areas. A lot of places in Sweden may be the ghetto, or, as you would have known, in Gamla Stan, there's a lot of tall 2 to 3, 5-story buildings. With flats, units. So we moved into a unit, and I started, going to primary and all the way through schooling, went all right. As I say, my kids are doing way better than what I'm doing. What I did. I don't tell them that because
the full extent, right?
Yeah, that's right. I'm trying to keep the bar up here, right?
Yeah. But let's decompress on this for a moment then. So you're 4 years old and you've moved to Sweden. So I guess then you don't necessarily have like a bunch of cultural baggage you're bringing with you. It's not like you have this idea of Australia because you're just too young, which kind of means I suppose the cultural formation happened in Sweden. So I don't know. Do you want to talk about that a bit, and then maybe the contrast with your brother who's 9, who maybe does have a bit of a cultural understanding of what Australia is, and then he moves to Sweden. I mean, out in Västerås, it's a bit different to Brisbane. We can admit, and the people are very different too. So I don't know. Reflect on that for a little bit before you sort of move into adulthood and start to like think about these ideas more.
Yeah, look, Mum, she didn't know anything about our culture, and even if she did, I think the information that she gave us at the dinner table, went in one ear and went out the other way. Yeah. If it wasn't about soccer or Nintendo 64 or Sega,
sure,
I would have focused because it didn't really hit, because it didn't really bother to me. All I was worrying about is getting love from a mother, where I come from, or culture, culture, anything with identity. It didn't really faze me. It didn't really bother me. All I was worrying about is, being loved, being wanted, being needed as a child. In my age back then, old, and my brother, I think my older brother Thomas, he wouldn't have known much because he comes from, get this, wow. We was told after 21 years that we were not related. To come back to Australia to then find out we are related. We are cousins. Because he comes from Camberwell, outside of Mount Isa.
Did people were people hiding that truth from you, or you just didn't know that you were related?
Well, Mum didn't know.
Like no one knew, basically. It just was a coincidence that these two boys were in the same foster home who happened to share at least a mum or a dad, right? Since they're cousins.
Yeah, like we had no. My foster mum didn't know anything. My foster dad didn't. There was minimum information. Have in mind, back in those days, the documents were nothing at all because they don't want the kids to be traced. So my birth name was Percy Collins to change to Michael Salbro.
Wow.
Yeah. Percy,
Yeah.
I thought that was
that's part of the like fucked up institutional division that the stolen generation and the White Australia policy like really just, I don't know, created. Like it just that fact alone, they'll take the kid and then change the name. It's just it's so egregious, you know. I don't know.
It's and I felt like a lot of black kids who have white parents, we feel like a coconut. There's a word in Sweden where a lot of the black kids who are raised with white parents feel like a coconut. White on the inside, black on the outside. We think like a white person, we act like a white person, we talk like a white man, we dress like a white man, but we're black. And that was the Australian government's plan, master plan, from when they first came to our shores, to breed us out, to kill us off. And the governor, Lachlan Macquarie, you know, the Macquarie Bank, Paul Macquarie, he said to his soldiers that he wants to get all the natives rounded up and brought back as slaves, and if anyone resisted, then to kill them in the most conspicuous ways to create fear in the natives, to pretty much tell them, well, since you're not listening, we're going to fuck you up, we're going to kill you, we're going to slaughter you. So a lot of our ancestors was hung or heads chopped off, or you're not going to believe this one. There was a sport called let's see how far we can kick the baby's head. So they dug holes in the grounds. Little babies, infants. This makes me sick to my stomach. Little babies, not even 1 year old. So they'll put them in these holes that they dug out, right? Fill it up until the neck, to their neck, till the head was just visible. And they would say, righto, come on, Tommy, let's see how far you can kick that baby's head. And it was a sport.
Yeah, I mean, you're not viewing people as humans if you're. I mean, obviously, like to add commentary to it doesn't really do much, but it is like, you know, that's an example of just how again the word egregious, how bad the crimes were from the Australians that came into Australia to try and. Well, as you say, and it's not a secret, like they wanted to be rid of the Aboriginals, so then it would just be the English outpost down on the other side of the world. But yeah, I haven't heard that anecdote before about Macquarie. It's horrible. You know, why do we have to name after people like that? It's fucked.
Yeah, look him up, Lachlan Macquarie, the governor. He's in. He was seen as the war hero, or, you know, a legend.
Yeah, sure.
Well, in our eyes, he's like Hitler.
Yeah.
So going back to the coconut feeling, white on the inside or black on the outside, I still feel that way still today. I'm 42 years old because I'm constantly reminded that I'm talking English. I'm not talking my language. I'm not talking my indigenous language. So that's a constant reminder of feeling like a coconut. Because, as I said, back in the days, we were not allowed to talk our language, practice our culture. So constantly, daily, we are reminded. And we are resilient. We shouldn't have to be resilient. We shouldn't have to, I shouldn't have to tell my kids, sons, because you're black, you're gonna be treated differently. You're gonna have to work extra hard than the white kid in your class. When you're in class, you sit extra still. You do not move. If he wants to play up, you sit extra still because you are the one that's getting in trouble. For me to explain that to my children, because they look at me like, well, why is it like that, Dad? My 10-year-old, he's like a normal 10-year-old. I shouldn't have to have those discussions with my children. That's how fucked up this world is. You know what I mean?
Yeah. In Brisbane today, for your boys, do you think that they still experience like significant racism against them?
Oh God, yeah. They go to a private school, so they're constantly reminded.
Yeah, really.
Oh yeah.
So maybe it's worth like explaining, contrasting it from when you were the only black boy in a Swedish school, maybe compared to your sons now being one of the few black boys in a private Australian school. Is there any comparison you can make there or commentary on it?
Oh look, my days in Sweden, growing up in the schooling, I had nothing but good to say. Sweden is far more advanced, ahead of us. I'll put my hand on it. Sweden is way ahead of us when it comes to acceptance. Yes, we have skinheads in Sweden. You've probably seen them in the Gamla Stan with the shiny Dr. Martens and the straps and the white t-shirts and the bald heads. But mate, they are a minority. They are a minority. While in Sweden, I've had more white mates than what I have here, and I'm like, why is it like this? Why? This shouldn't be like this. And when I tell my mates, my indigenous mates, like, brothers, I had more white mates in Sweden than what I have here. It shouldn't be like that. We should all get along, get together, work alongside each other. Why is it like this? And then when I started reading the true story, because in the books in Sweden, I'm going to get to that later, how I found out that I'm Aboriginal.
Yeah.
So going back to the coconut. Look, my mum, she didn't know much about it, and any traditions that we had back in Australia, we didn't keep it. We just followed the Swedish customs and the festivities, like
having crayfish parties in midsummer.
Crayfish, yeah. Surströmming. I don't know if you've tried surströmming yet.
Yeah, they forced me to try it. Yeah, seriously.
Fermented fish. Yeah, no way.
Yeah.
So growing up in Eskilstuna, there was a lot of black kids, African kids.
Okay.
So I naturally thought that I was African. I didn't know that I was Aboriginal. No one told me. So I'm out here living in Sweden, trying to find myself. Well, how do I fit into a Swedish society? Okay, well, there's a black kid. Where are you from? Oh, from Tanzania or Eritrea or Somalia. Okay, cool. Yeah, right on, brother. Well, I must.
And where would you say you're from? Australia, but you wouldn't exactly know like your ethnic roots.
No, because I thought black Australians were Africans too.
Really? Okay. Yeah.
But as I said, I didn't know better. You know, I'm putting one on one. Well, he's black. I'm black. I must be African. And coming back to later on how I found out my roots. So I was, what am I? 7, 8, 9, 10, and then Mum passed away in breast cancer. So when I was all the way till 10, 11, I thought I was African. And Mum passed away in breast cancer, and that's when I shot downhill. I went downhill and couldn't handle the loss of my mother. Huge loss. You know, she was my rock, and we moved to my best mate's mum and dad's house to stay there for a bit until the social service or child safety could figure out where to put us. And then from my mate's house to then Auntie Bibi, because Auntie Bibi used to live in Solna. She moved to far north Östersund, which is cold as fuck.
Yeah, fucking hell. That's way up there. That's skiing territory. Is it not? Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
Look, don't get me wrong, I love skiing. I love snowboarding. I was a snowboarder, right? I was a snowboarder. Yeah. Had my Burton snowboard, you got to have the Burton, or the cruise one.
Nice.
Those were the two brands. So, we moved all the way up to Östersund, lived on a farm. And, living on a farm, that was hard yakka, because she had, chooks, geese, pigs, turkeys, and, so, up early at 5 in the morning, collect the eggs and clean up the chook pens and the geese pen and whatever, and then come back, have a shower, get ready for school, and that's farm life,
And you're with Thomas as well.
Yeah, Thomas. Yeah, Thomas moved with us. Although Thomas stayed probably for till he was 18, and then he got his own place.
Okay.
Same place. We lived in a country town called Hakos. Very country town. I think the population is like 5,000.
Okay.
Maybe not even that. Very small community, and everyone knows everyone and whatnot. So it's a very tight knit community, which was great because we got along with everyone, and we was the black kids in the little Hakos.
Sure.
The only black kids there, which was fine because we were not treated differently. And I always come back to Sweden is far more advanced when it comes to acceptance and less racism. It blows my mind. And coming to Australia, mate, it's like, really? Sweden, Australia, you are way behind. So, started in high school, and then I'm finished my English class, went on lunch, and then my English teacher pulls me up on my lunch break. I'm walking with my African mate in the hallway, corridor, and she said, Michael, it was interesting when you said you were from Australia. What part of Australia? I said, oh, look, miss, I don't know. All I know is I'm Australian, but I'm African. And she looked at me like, nah, I'm pretty sure you're something else. I'm like, what do you mean, miss? All these years since I was 7, 8, I thought I'm African. Have in mind, I'm now 17.
Oh, really? Okay.
And, so I moved to my auntie when I was, 13, 14.
Up in Östersund.
Yeah. Oh, no, hang on, I'm not 17. Sorry, I lie. I'm 13, 14.
Okay.
So I think I was in grade 7. Grade 7. What are you when you're in grade 7?
13, 14 sounds right to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she pulls me up, and I said, look, I'm African. I'm from Australia, but I'm African. She said, no, you're not. Come with me to the library on my lunch break. So she dragged me to the library. She grabbed all these books about Australia. And she said, Mike, I want you to read up. And I hate reading.
Yeah.
That's it. It was about 5 books.
On your
Australia.
lunch break as well. You're getting homework.
I know. Right? Like, the audacity, miss. Come on.
Yeah.
And it says, look, I want you to read up on about Australia. I want you to read up all about your country, and I want a essay, and I want you to do a presentation in our next English class. I said, right, well, I'm going to need some time. I said, yeah, well, I'll give you a month. Because, yeah, she knew that I had a bit of a hard time of reading and that. And I did it. I finally did it because, as I said, I hate reading. But the more I read about it, the more I was getting interested because the people in the book, they started to look like me. They look like me. The same features, the same hair. Because I looked at my mate and I said, well, hang on, you got more curly hair than I have. Mine's more wavy. So I think Mrs. got, I'm pretty sure Mrs. onto something. Yeah. But, have it guess, in the books, obviously, it didn't talk about the genocide. All it was about, the indigenous people. A few photos of my ancestors stand on one leg with a spear and a boomerang or a shield in one, and then you have the ladies sitting on the ground preparing food and with the kids as well. So it wasn't much around what really happened, the genocide and whatnot, Captain Cook and all that. But obviously around Kathy Freeman and the Wallabies and the Crickets and famous people, Crocodile Dundee and all that. What was his name?
Paul Hogan.
Paul Hogan, that's
Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah, Paul Hogan. And I think he had a TV show, didn't he too? Yeah.
Oh, to be honest, mate, I don't know.
The Hogan
All I know
show
is Shrimp on the Barbie guy and Crocodile
Shrimp
Dundee.
on the Barbie.
Yeah.
How old are you?
26.
Jeez, mate, you're a puppy.
Yeah, man, I know. It has been, I don't think I've treated my body that well. I'm definitely surprised everyone to say it's 26.
Mate, you're young. So, yeah, well, I grew up on Skippies. I don't know if you remember Skippy.
No, I mean, I know of them, but I never watched them, When I was a boy, it was like Cartoon Network, and it was American cartoons. We didn't get, like, the Australian programming,
Yeah. So I did all that. So I read the books, did my essay, and I did my presentation, and I got A plus, surprisingly, because that's probably the only plus I got. A plus I ever got. Sports, I probably got a strong B, maybe minus A minus. But yeah, it was, that I will never forget that day. And I'll still remember it like it was yesterday.
What an amazing moment, though. It's like these serendipitous moments that this is non-contextual to what we're speaking about, but something that I like to think about or notice is how a serendipitous moment can just completely change the future of your life. I mean, it started when you were 3 months old, and Ingvar walks into a foster home and decides to adopt you, and then her leaving her husband, you going to Sweden, and then like this moment with the teacher maybe sparking a curiosity in you about figuring out your own identity, what is actually an Aboriginal person and what is Australia, maybe I'm not African, which also is like, it's a big place.
Yeah.
There's lots of different places there, but
shit, yeah.
But yeah, I don't know if that's something you think about as well. But like the idea of a serendipitous opportunity, how one little thing can come into your life and all of a sudden everything after that is different.
Yeah, and it just, that little thing changes your future. And as you said, when I think about it now, it's like, fuck, if she didn't pull me up, still today I will be in Sweden thinking I'm African.
Yeah, you reckon it was that drastic? Like you would have just continued on with whatever your trajectory was in Sweden and not been like, I want to get back to the homeland. No.
Exactly.
Okay.
Well, obviously, if I became older, like in my 30s, and, broadened my horizons and read the news and seen the news and read the newspapers, obviously I would have known then. But it would have taken a while.
Sure.
But at that age, to find out that I'm indigenous, Aboriginal, living in Sweden, to then finally find out, blew my mind. It felt like learning to walk again.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, holy shit, here I've been living in a bubble, and here she comes along and busts my bubble, and turns my life upside down again, but in a good way.
Mm-hmm.
Where I now got to start crawling again. Well, what does it mean to be indigenous Aboriginal man? I'm not African now. I'm Aboriginal. Do I have to act a certain way? How did I dress? Oh well, I'm not dressing up in a lap, or I'm not walking around naked. Fuck that, it's too cold. 40 minus. No. Fuck no. My mum passed away, and then stayed at my auntie's for a few years, and then started going downhill, and then up in a juvenile rehab centre. Called Hustler Kollektivet. Mm-hmm. So Hustler Kollektivet has been around since the early 80s around Sweden, which is a drug and alcohol rehab juvenile centre. In saying that, it doesn't have any cell doors or cell rooms. It's pretty open. It's like a halfway house.
Okay.
But, saying that, I tried to escape a few times, and then obviously the cops were called, and I was arrested and put back into the centre. I tried to escape wintertime. What an idiot.
Do you want to talk about like what sort of led to you going downhill, or is it not worth covering? Like, for example, why, for instance, you might have started to rebel rather than, I don't know, just complete high school.
Yeah, no, it'll be relevant, because then that'll trickle into what I'm doing now, because I did a 180 with my life.
Yeah.
Because if it wasn't for these guys, if it wasn't for the rehab juvie centre, then I would not be working in that field now. Yeah. So this centre plays a huge part of my life now, because if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be here. So I think this is when I was 14, 15. No, 14. Yeah, I was 14 when I was taken in.
Mm-hmm.
I think I just started high school. How old are you then?
Yeah, 14, 15. It's different here in Sweden because they start high school year 9, right? So it's probably 15. Yeah.
15, yeah. That's right. So I ended up in juvie because after, doing a lot of crazy stuff, my auntie could not handle me. Mm-hmm. She tried her very hard, as poor girl. She was very loving, and she did her very best. As much as I tried to rebel against her, but it was just me acting out and not coping and handling the issues that I have. I couldn't co-regulate with my emotions, so obviously I acted out and ended up in this juvie. I was there for about 6 years. It did me good because the drug and alcohol system in Sweden, they have a very strong policy, very strict policy. This is why I ended up in Australia, because the Australian people in Port Macquarie, they heard about the strict drug and alcohol policy laws in Sweden. Like marijuana. Marijuana's like buying Allen's lollies, here in Australia. Well, a stick in Sweden, mate, bro, you can get a few months in a lockup for that one. Yeah. It's very, very hard, very strict. So the successful rate of rehabilitation is very high. So I ended up in Hustler Kollektivet and did 6 years there, and then I moved away, lived my own life, and then I decided to come back and work for him. And I worked for about a year or two, and then I was living then on Gotland, because Gotland had Hustler Kollektivet there too. So there's one in Gotland, one in actual Hustler, That's where it started because, in Hustler, which is sort of like outside of Hudiksvall. So you got Sundsvall, Hudiksvall, and then inland is Hustler.
Okay.
And that's where the name came from. So Hustler had one in Hustler, one in Gotland, one in Stockholm, and one in Göteborg. And I think they opened one in Malmö. So I moved down to Gotland, started working for them, and then the manager there said, "Look, Mike, we got offered to come down to Port Macquarie and open up a rehab juvie centre down there. Do you want to come?" I'm like, "Fuck yeah!" I always wanted to go back to Australia, but fuck me, that just would have cost me 14,000 kronor to go down, and back. I don't have that kind of money. So they say, "Yeah, look, free flights down and back, all paid for. You sleeping on site. You're paid wages, food provided, and etc."
So by this stage, you're working with the Hustler Collective. You're not a inmate there. Inmate's the wrong word, but what would you call it? Is it inmate? Or a
inmate / patient.
Patient, yeah. Inmate sounds a little bit too criminal,
Yeah. Well,
but
it's not a prison. There's no cells. There's no lockable cells.
But
you
ended up in the Hustler Collective, where you went through rehabilitation to the point where you were then working for them.
Yes.
Cool. Okay, cool. So that's the transition there where you realize, like, the social work, you want to be a part of rehabilitating others, and then they offer you to go to Australia. All right, cool. So then what's it like when you touch down for the first time since you were taken as a boy from
Man, mate, I was nervous as fuck. I was like, shit, I'm going back to the country where I'm from. The country that I read about in these books in high school, the country where my biological mum is. Shit, I forgot about that part.
Yeah.
So, living in Hudiksvall, come back from high school, from class, finished the day at high school, came back, chucked my feet on the table, about to put the telly on, and my home phone rings. And it's my Swedish dad. And he's like, "Righto, hey son, I know you don't want to talk to me." I said, "Yeah, you're right. I just want to let you know that your biological mum is looking for you." I'm like, "What do you mean looking for me? Isn't she dead?" And no, she's well and truly alive, and she's reached out to me through this company called Link Up. Link Up is a company that assists and supports our people around finding stolen generation people, who's been stolen. So Link Up helps the family members who are here in Australia to find them. And they do the reunion with the families and the participant, the client. So Dad said, "Oh, look,
service."
Oh no, really good." And I think it started in the 80s. After the Bring Home, I think it's called Bring Him Home report. That's when Link Up started, I think. Very important organisation. Started off in Brisbane. I think they now got an office in Cairns and one in Sydney. So they do a very important role, and it's thanks to them that I'm here. Well, it's not really thanks to them, but they played a huge role with me reunifying myself and with my family. So come down to Australia, worked 12 months in this rehab juvie. It went very well, very successful. And the only difference is with Sweden, the court can say, "Right, we're going to send you to this rehab, and you cannot leave until you are deemed to be fit to live in a normal society, no matter what." While here in Australia, there was no such laws, so we found it hard to get people to come voluntarily to our things, to our rehab juvie centre. But we found a few, and hopefully they still doing good. But yeah, after 12 months, I then decided to go up to Brisbane. So I rang my old man who lives in Brisbane, remarried with a Philippine lady, and I've got a half sister who's also Philippine / Swedish. I think they still live in Brisbane. So yeah, Dad rings Link up and said, righto, Michael's here in Brisbane, let's do the reunion. Shit, I forgot about this too. In Sweden, when I was in Gotland,
Yeah.
there was this Swedish company from Nordisk TV, which means Northern television station. So they were at Gotland Hustler Kollektivet, interviewing this Aussie Sydney worker. I think it was not an au pair, but he came in from Australia to I think he was studying in Sydney, but did his placement there. So I happened to walk into one of the rooms where they have these full of guitars, and I love to play guitar, so I thought on my break I'm going to go in and play guitar. I walked in on him, and I go, oh shit, sorry, what are you guys doing? I'll be recording Jeremy. He's from Sydney, he's a white male from Sydney, and we're just doing an interview about him and what it's like living abroad in Sweden.
Cool.
So right, okay, cool, I'll leave his bed. And he said, oh, Jeremy, Mike. Jeremy said, Mike, you from Australia? You're Aboriginal, aren't you? And the TV crew's like, well, hang on. How about Mike? Come back in here. How about we said you, indigenous Australian and white Australian, and we'll have an interview. And 20 questions later, they decided they wanted to do a documentary called about my life. And it's I'll send you a link. It's on Vimeo. It's called Big Mike, and it goes for an hour.
Nice.
So they followed me from then, 1998, I think, till 2004 or 3. Yeah, it took about 3 to 4 years to do this documentary. So it goes for 1 hour. So they followed me from Sweden, and then they came to Australia. So they drove me up from Port Macquarie to Brisbane to do the reunion, to capture all that on the documentary. So it's all on the documentary.
Oh, wow.
Well.
Okay. High pressure, isn't it? You got cameras rolling and you're going to see your mum for the first time. Okay.
Oh, no. Sometimes I'm like, please don't capture me if I'm crying. I don't want people to see that. Fuck that. That's fucking shame. Oh.
All right. So you're expecting to see your mum, and there's a documentary crew there, and you're in Australia working in rehabilitation. So how does it progress from there?
Yeah, so we did the reunion in a park, Carrilpa Park in Brisbane. So I'm nervous as fuck, you know. I'm coming out of the car and I'm looking at these group of people at the bench, you know, with food on the table.
Someone.
Yeah, trying to see if any features they resembles with, or oh yeah, one big fella there. That's my brother James. He looks like me, same shape, big fella.
Mm-hmm.
And then my mum, she's tall but skinny, and then my stepdad, he's about short and stocky. And I'm approaching them, and then just, you know, oh, hey, how are you? My name's Mike, yeah, you know. Welcome back. And don't be too happy. I might be going back to Sweden yet. But that's what I thought. I said, look, if this doesn't work out, I'll go back to Sweden.
Yeah.
You know, because when I got the phone call from my Swedish dad back in Sweden, I got a lot of anger. Like, fuck, who the fuck do you think you are ringing me now? Saying that my mum's looking for me. Tell her to go get fucked, because it's too late. I already have a mum. She passed away. Don't come looking for me now when I wasn't good enough back then. So tell mum to go get fucked. It's too late. You know, if she didn't want me back then she can't have me now. You know, don't ever fucking claim me.
Because you didn't know about the details for what happened or anything. Yeah, okay.
Exactly. and hang up, and he tried to ring me back a few times, and I also kept saying, tell her to go get fucked, you can go get fucked too. Thanks to you, mum's dead. And then we met in Brisbane, my dad, and then he told me his side of the story. I was like, right, okay, cool, fair enough, thank you for it, because there's two sides to the story.
Sure.
Yeah, so we stayed in...
You didn't mention your dad, at all. Like, what was your side of the story with your dad?
Well, you know, yeah, he was a bit of a pisshead, you know. But I'll give him that. He was a hard worker, you know. He in general, he paid the bills, and he was there as much as possible as a father, and you know, he gave us the love that he could. But you know, obviously the alcohol took over.
Oh, sorry, I was referring to your birth dad.
Oh yeah, so he wasn't.
He's at the park.
No, he's up in Townsville.
Okay.
So he's living in Townsville, remarried with another lady, and he's got kids of his own. So I'm the eldest out of 10 brothers, no sisters.
Wow.
So the two brothers are with my... Oh, no. So the two brothers are with my mum, and the rest are with my dad. Mm-hmm. So Dad's up in Townsville. There was no mention of him by Mum whatsoever until probably a year later, because that's when I started exploring out in the Sherberg community. So yeah, we did the reunion, and then it went for about 3 days.
But your mum was there?
My mum was there.
Okay. So what was it like when you do see her, you know, after all these years, and you have this idea in your head about your mum having left you, and then she tells you this story that you were in fact taken? You know, how was that then? Like getting that story from your mum?
Oh yeah, look, I was a bit standoffish, obviously, because I was still angry, still hurt. Mm-hmm. Didn't know the full story, because up till now, no one has told me the true story of what happened in Australia.
Okay.
No, I don't know why, or if it was just no one really knew the story, because at this point I've just been around the Swedish company working in Port Macquarie, and then drove up with the Swedish film crew. Mm-hmm. So I've really hadn't had a chance to actually find out the true story of what really happened. So I'm coming up to Brisbane, still with a lot of frustration and anger, and you know, oh yeah, come on, let's fucking get this over and done with. Fuck, you know, couldn't care less if it works or not. I just want to fucking see him and then piss off back to Sweden. So after the reunion, after these 3 days, I said to Mum, look, I want to go back to Sherberg. And she said, no, I don't think you're ready for it. I'm like, what do you mean? I want to see where I come from. I have every right to do that, because you know, you can't. If you don't take me, I'll go there by myself. Still angry, still spiteful, you know, still angry and fucking pissed at her. You know, and everything that came out of her mouth, I'm like, yeah, shut the fuck up. Yeah, I was so fucking pissed. But still curious, you know, to see who she is and who my siblings and other uncles and aunties and cousins are. So we ended up in Sherberg, and then obviously big tear party, and a lot of happy tears, and met all my other uncles and cousins and aunties and nephews and nieces, and I think there would have been like 40 in my grandmother's nan and pop's yard. About 40 of us, and everyone lining up and trying to introduce everyone, and yeah, a lot happening, a lot of emotions and a lot of feelings, and still deciding, shit, is this for me? Am I going to stay here? You know, because the Sherberg mission is back then it wasn't what I'm used to. Growing up in Sweden, you know, that's what I'm used to.
Mm-hmm. So what was like different about it? Obviously things look different, but was there like, are you referring to maybe like the quality of the housing or the way the community was set
Yeah.
up? What was the difference that you were saying?
Oh, mate. Yeah, there was a few houses that, barely had a door. And if there was a door, there would have been a big hole in it.
Right.
Stray dogs, running around, and,
There wasn't a
nappies
nice, neat, and
everywhere.
orderly Swedish side. That's
No,
what you were saying.
exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Did that bother me? No, because, I've been homeless. When I used to live in Stockholm, I was homeless for a few months, and then my mate took me in, so I'm that kind of guy that will go with the flow and appreciate what I get. I'm easy to adapt to any situation. And I think that's, throughout all the trauma and all the bullshit I've been through, I think it's learned myself to humble myself and to respect and appreciate what I get in life. And enjoy, because you're not promised tomorrow. So when I came back to Sherberg, it was not what I was used to, but that didn't faze me. All I was there to learn about my culture, learn about my people, getting to know my family. That's where my focus was on. It was a lot, I was emotionally drained because, not only learning my family, but also learning the culture at the same time. Learning the cultural protocols I have to follow. Learning about a whole new system that I'm not used to, Once again, I'm learning how to crawl.
And also, this is actually someone just came to me. How was your English? Did you speak Swedish at home with your mum growing up? And then obviously at school it's Swedish. Is English your second language, actually?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
okay.
English
So,
is...
are you decent at English at least when you come to Australia, or are people like speaking? Because also you're out in the country as well. It's not very, textbook English as well. People speak fucking differently, for sure.
Oh, shit, yeah. Like the country Aussie and the city urban Aussie is totally different.
Yeah.
And, the country farmers always take the piss out of Mickey out of the urban Aussies and vice versa. And even back home in Sherberg, a lot of my mob, they think, well, you must be rich, or we call it flash. You're a flash, Big Mike, you're a flash. Living in the big city, you must be rich, hey? You're driving around in a nice car, and, I was like, boy, for starters, your rent is $80 a week, maybe 100. 3 bedrooms, and my rent's like $400 a week. So for starters, you're paying less rent, you're paying less electricity and gas. So we're gonna talk about who's got the most money. You guys shut your fucking mouth. So where were we?
You just come back to Sherberg.
Oh yeah, so coming back to Sherberg for my first time, I felt that I didn't have to look over my shoulder, because all the time I was living in Sweden, I felt something was watching me. Whenever I was going walking at night or whatever, I'd always look back. I don't know if I was paranoid or fucking high or smoking weed all the fucking time. And I said to Mum, look, Mum, I don't have that feeling anymore. Why is that? She reckon, good, because I sent something over to watch over you. I sent something when you was born. I gave you a special gift so that thing can watch over you, protect you. So that's the feeling you had. I'm like, what? That's fucking trippy. Like all these years I felt like something was watching me, To then tell my mum, and she actually confirmed it. Said, yes, son, when you was born, and when you was taken away from my arms, I gave you a special gift for that thing to watch over you until you come back home. I'm like, wow, that is fucking trippy. Okay, cool. Thank you. So yeah, what am I? I'm 20. and had my first 21st birthday in Sherberg. Worked as a radio announcer. Then got on the police force. Worked as a copper.
Oh yeah, nice one.
Yeah, I know, community police.
Yeah.
So the community police is not like your state police. We don't have guns. We don't have batons. We had we have rights to arrest people, so we can arrest people and chuck them in the paddy wagon, and we just took them to Mergen to the watch house. So. Yeah, it was a bit weird because, not weird, but, working as a police, I never thought in my whole life, like, all my mates,
you'd be a copper.
all my mates back home are like, Mike, what the fuck? What's wrong with you?
Yeah.
Wake up to yourself. You're a dog now. You're a dog, are you? Oh, man. But, hey, it's, paid my bills, and, yeah, it was good to see that kind of life because, I had to lock up a few of my uncles and cousins, and look, rightfully so, because they committed crimes that were, to me were disgusting.
Mm-hmm.
Especially around DV. I'm so against DV. Growing up with DV myself, seeing my mum getting bashed, I hate that. It's domestic violence towards men and women. It's definitely against that. So I had to lock up a few.
It'd be fucked up to not be against it. Yeah.
And to see my cousins and uncles do it to their wives and missus, fuck, I said, get in the fucking paddy wagon. And then they try to pull the family card, like, oh, well, come on, I'm your cousin, or I'm your uncle, I used to go to school with your mum. And I said, well, sorry, uncle, respectfully, but you just bashed your missus. Sorry, but you got to go. Get in the paddy wagon. Obviously, they try to resist.
Yeah, geez. I mean, that must be freaking tough.
It was, because, me coming to the community, I'm trying to...
Yeah, because you're also an outsider, more or less, right? You're the guy that grew up in Sweden,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to fit in. I'm trying to find my place in the community. And here I am going against the grain.
Yeah, right.
Sometimes I'm liked because I've helped those that needed it, and sometimes I'm disliked because I'm locking up the bad guys, And so be it. I'm not going to lose my job. I've got bills to pay.
So, Mike, you've gone into the community policing, but am I right to say that you actually haven't been back to Sweden since? So you came down to Port Macquarie with the Hustler Collective and never actually went back to Sweden?
That's right. I went back to Sweden 2006 and came back to Australia 2007. So in that period when I went home to Sweden, I actually had to do some go into the studio and do some voiceover for the documentary and complete the doco, and so we had to do some shots. We went to Stockholm, do some shooting there, and then we went back to Hudiksvall to do some shooting there, and just tying up some loose ends and completing the doco. But yeah, that was the last time I was back, was 2006 and 7. So I'm very overdue to go back.
Yeah, 100%.
I haven't been back home since.
It's wild, man. And it's obviously just because it costs a lot to come home, but maybe...
Yeah, it is.
Maybe they do a follow-up, SVT can do a follow-up on the doco and fly you over.
Well, a lot of people have thought, well, hey, Mike, why don't you do a doco follow-up about life after, done the reunion and done this and that, life now. I thought about it, and then someone said, "Oh, you want to write a book?" I'm like, "No, I hate books. I hate reading about it."
Well, you got a home here in Stockholm. I'm sure you won't be lacking a home, but you got one here if you come with the boys.
Oh no, definitely. I'll feel home. I'll definitely feel at home. Because still today I still got 1 foot here, 1 foot in Sweden, and Eskilstuna, Stockholm, Östersund, Hudiksvall always be home to me. But how long you been there?
Only 9 months.
How do you feel?
Well, about the country or about being here?
Being here in the country, and why are you even there?
Well, yeah. Why am I here? I'm here for the most sort of like cliched reason. It's because I met a Swedish woman and fell in love, and then moved to this country with a Swedish woman. So that is that is why. And also from my experience, just meeting other Australians here, it's like 99% the same reason as well. So, the classic honeypot. But that's why I'm here. How do I think about it? Australia is my home. I love Australia. I think it's an amazing country, and all my mates are there, my family's there. But I am also, I feel like it's also an adventure to be able to live in another country, and so I really like it for sure. The circumstances are very different for, like I'm here entirely sort of voluntarily, and I can leave really if I want to, and I can also fly home at any given time if I wanted to. So like I'm experiencing Sweden not as a home as much as obviously you have, but also as someone who maybe has kids here does as well. Like I'm experiencing Sweden as a place where I live, but not necessarily as my home. And you understand that the difference there is everything, So I don't speak Swedish, for example. So there's also that, all my work, I work for myself. So, I just fucking take the computer to the kitchen and I'm typing away on the keyboard. So I don't necessarily have like a community here that isn't just beyond Emma and her family. And a fun moment of synchronicity here. You speak about Erikstuna. It's next to Ramnas, right? Next to Västerås. I'm going to Ramnas tomorrow to celebrate Midsummer.
Whoa.
Yeah, so it's so funny, 'cause
much.
it's such a random fucking place in Sweden, and it happens to be just next to where you are. But actually, that's a nice sort of transition, Mike, because I think we've done your story justice. At least up until the point where you've returned to Australia. I want, if you still have time, because I know we've been going for a while now, so maybe you're a bit tired, but if we still have time, it'd be cool to talk about now what you're doing and what your like role within the sort of Brisbane community is, and then also some just differences between Australia and Sweden, because I do notice there you still refer to Sweden as home. And, maybe that'll always be the case. It's just like some things we can't separate from our experience, and Sweden will be home. So I know I've just said a lot there, but
no, you're right. Let's go for it.
About that?
I'm not going anywhere. It's only 7:00 anyway. My plan is to retire back in Sweden. Look, if I had kids in Sweden, obviously it would be a lot cheaper because here I've got to pay school fees and school lunches. And
do you have a Swedish passport?
Yeah, dual citizenship. I have a dual citizenship.
But you can still come back, and then your kids will be in the Swedish system, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So, I mean, it's just possible, right?
It is. Well, as soon as the borders are open, I think Qantas is saying you got to get the jab before you can fly with Qantas. I'm like, no one's jabbing me. Fuck no. Last, 2 weeks ago, someone got blood clot in their brain and died. Fuck me dead.
Yeah, well, they might not, honestly, Mike, they might not let you into Europe without the jab. It could get to that state.
Oh, that is fucked up. Yeah, look, Sweden is always going to be home to me, and I'll hopefully want to retire back in Sweden. Just to finish off my years. And if my kids follow me, then yeah, great, if not, then they'll always have a place to come to and visit. Because I want them to be as free as I was, travelling around, seeing places, seeing the world. And because as you know, living in Sweden, everything's so close. like one weekend we used to be in Denmark, and next weekend we'd be in Finland. Next month we'd be in Norway partying up, and it's so close to everywhere. And I was a bit of a pisshead back then too. But it's because I grew up in Sweden and I learned everything about Sweden, and I bled my heart for. I still bleed for Sweden in the World Cup soccer, and the women were playing. The Aussies, I was going for Sweden, the Swedish female side. I'm like, fuck you, Aussies, go Sweden, go. That's how much I bleed for Sweden. You know what I mean? I still bleed. Yeah. And people, like in my own community, they can't fully understand it because they never walked a mile in my shoes. They never been there. They never been in my shoes. They've heard about it because of their ancestors or grandparents went through it, But they never actually walked a mile in their shoes, so they don't know how it feels for us. Because I spoke to one of the uncles in Brisbane. He was stolen generation. He was taken to Holland. So he grew up we're similar age. I think he was like 10. So he grew up over there since he was 10 and learned the language. He speaks the language fluent, and he came back and then he started working for Link Up. But yeah, and as a counsellor, and I met him last year, and I said to him, Uncle, do you ever feel... I was a bit hesitant because I wasn't sure how he was going to take this question, but I said, do you ever feel like a traitor, that you feel guilty for not wanting to be in Australia? That you want to go back to Holland and live there? That you bleed for another country? That Australia doesn't feel home to you? And he's like, yep, I know exactly how you feel. I'm like, oh, thank fuck. I'm not the only one. But it was so good that he can, that he felt the same way, because all those years I felt so guilty, like I shouldn't feel this way. Why am I feeling this way? I should feel that this is my home, but it doesn't. I'm not going to tell anyone, because then people might look at me weird. My own people might disown me. Like,
yeah, for sure. People are going to have big expectations of you, right? Like, you're from, like, this is at least what might be the impression, Mike, but you're an Aboriginal. You were stolen. Like, this is your home. Don't tell me about your different experience. This is your home. It's cool that you did that, but this is your home. I imagine that, like, could be a source of guilt, because you're rooted in your experience. Like, you were 4 years old when you went to Sweden. You grew up in their system. On a very sort of like what would you call it, like a beautiful little farm up in Östersund, raising animals. Like, that's not Queensland. And it's impossible to separate your sort of belonging from your experience. Like, that's a universal truth. It's cool that the guy who was raised in Holland said the same thing. That's that is cool.
It was. I felt good that I was like, fuck yeah, finally someone that gets me.
So, Mike, now it leads us up to sort of where you are now. Brisbane. What is it that you're doing in Brisbane?
Well, at the moment I'm in Lismore, New South Wales.
It's not Brisbane. Apologies.
Oh, no, you're right. I live in Brisbane, but I work in Lismore.
Okay.
So I've been living in Brisbane for the last 16 years. With my kids and my ex-partner, which we are, co-parenting really well now. So two beautiful boys, Demario, who's 10, and Mikey boy, MJ, who's 14. So very important. what's the word I'm looking for? They play a huge part of my life. Because now I have to make sure that I don't, I'm trying to break the cycle, which means that, I'm trying to make sure that they know who they are, where they come from, who their people are, culture, teaching them cultural protocols that they need to follow in our community, laws, Aboriginal laws, so that they know what they can and what they can't do is so important. Because I didn't have that. I didn't grow up with that, and I didn't grow up with a father. So just today, I was driving home from work. I was like, "Oh, geez, I better have this. I better have this discussion about life after when I pass away. Got to have that discussion because I know what it's like to live without a father. I'll constantly remind them. I'm always here. If you need me, ring me to just have a yarn, or because obviously I've got life experience and I've been there, done that, and I just want you to know that take advantage of me while I'm here, because once I'm gone, I won't be there for you. I won't be there to answer those questions or support you and whatnot. So now's the time, because you never promise tomorrow. You never promise tomorrow. So seen so many deaths in my life and all the shit that I've been through. It definitely gives you a different perspective of life. You appreciate life. And I wake up every day blessed, thinking, wow, okay, let's make the most out of it. Because, statistically, when it comes to indigenous people, I should be dead at 35. Statistically, I shouldn't be alive at all.
So what do you mean by that?
Well, statistically, an Aboriginal male don't live past 40 because of chronic diseases, which are coming from, the white man's food, the white man's lifestyle. Back in our days, my great-great-grandfather's days, I'm looking at old photos, we had six-packs. We had grandfathers who had six-packs because they were fit as fuck. Because they had to be. Running and chasing after kangaroos, spearing them. Fucking, they were fit. And that's why we I work for a company called Black Card, and we deliver cultural awareness programs, workshops. And and there's a funny joke my boss tells. Oh yeah, us indigenous people, we heard that you guys think that we get houses, we get free cars, we get free this and free that. The only free thing we got was free what do you call it, chronic diseases, all that stuff that comes with chronic disease, heart attacks, diabetes, STDs, all that stuff. It's and So in my work that I do now, I support people with NDIS who are part of the National Disability Independence Scheme. One of my mates just started a company here in Lismore, so I'm coming down to help out because there's a shortage of Indigenous male workers, not only for this company but all around Queensland and New South Wales. Like, it's hard to find Indigenous men to work in this field because most men, not only Indigenous, most male workers prefer to work in constructions or carpentry or boiler or you name it. 90% in the social work is female. So it's a very tiring job, but it's a very rewarding as well, because I've been doing it since I was 19, since I got out in Sweden, and that's my passion, to give back to the community because someone helped me to turn my life around, and it's my duty now to help someone else, to give them the same opportunities. Not many people last, and I think, as the saying goes, those who walk the mile in our shoes are the best case workers, best youth workers, best social workers, because they know what it takes to turn your life around. They have patience, resilience. Working with a client can take up to 6 months to maybe 6 years. It took me bloody... what are we talking? 4 years, 6 years in the rehab GV, and then add another 4 years after that because I relapsed, So, another 4 years after that, and then I became fully clean and, just turned my life around and, and that's why I became a youth worker, social worker, case worker, and working with disability now, so, yeah, I'm blessed. I try to step out of this feeling. I worked at office work, did a factory job, but it, mentally stimulating, it was not there. Putting boxes onto a band, and I couldn't do that for the rest of my life.
It doesn't sound fun, no.
No. But working with people, it's beautiful because every day is never the same, and every day you are learning.
I mean, it's also, I imagine, like, some people that might start relying on you, it could just, I mean, the sort of stress that you can take on from that, I imagine it's harrowing. I do have a lot of respect for anyone that works in any sort of social work, just because, you're like voluntarily putting yourself into a position where you're dealing with people who I imagine, correct me if I'm wrong, but most of the time, like, they don't want your help. They don't give a fuck about what you're trying to say, yet you're still, like, coming over the top and, like, that just endless support. I'm pretty sure I wouldn't have the sort of the capacity for it. So I really think that, so much respect for people that really, really can just cop all of the, there's only so many times you can be told to fuck off before you eventually just fuck off. But I feel like social workers, they'll stick around, and it's amazing. It's just amazing.
It is, and it's draining, as I said, because you put a lot of, you empty your cup. You got to make sure your cup is filled as well, because you're taking a lot out of yourself emotionally, physically, not as much physically, but emotionally. You're actually emptying yourself and putting it into them, and then trying to give them what you now have. And that's why self-care is so important, because if you don't, you're going to get yourself burnt.
Yeah, for sure. But Mike, look, you've got to run off to dinner, so I got 4 quick questions, which I think are quite fun between Australia and Sweden. Okay? No, 3 quick questions.
3. Shoot.
You ready to fire them away?
Yeah, my bro.
What do you miss most from Sweden?
Ooh. I miss my mates. Oh yeah, I really miss my mates, that I grew up with.
Do you still keep in touch with them on Facebook and stuff like that?
Yeah, still keep in contact. But it's not the same,
Yeah, of course, not the same. You got to be there.
Yeah.
What food do you miss most from Sweden?
Ooh, okay. That would be köttfärslimpa, which is your meatloaf.
Okay.
Janssons frestelse, which is sort of like a potato bake, but with a lot of herring and a lot of herring fish kind of. But yeah, like a potato bake herring
nice
fish. Yeah.
That does sound extremely Swedish. I haven't had that one yet. I've had the patatas gratin a couple of times, but we've never thrown heron into it.
Patatas gratin.
Yeah, it's
well, that's your
shit.
potato bake.
Yeah, exactly. All right, mate. And now these are a little bit more about the culture, really. And I think you would have a good insight into this, and I think it's worth talking about, because something that I like to notice and figure out is differences between cultures, because it's true that we're all the same, but we do have stark differences between our different cultures. And, you can 100% notice this as a man who grew up in Sweden and now lives in Australia. There's a lot of similarities, but fuck me, there are some differences too. So I want you to say, what is something that Sweden could use that's Australian, and then something Australian could use that's Swedish?
Ooh. That's a very good question. Something that the Aussies can take on board is the economical system. I don't know how it's set up, but you pay a lot of tax in Sweden, but you get a lot back. As in cheap medical, dental, schooling was free for me. I went to school all the way from daycare to high school. Everything was free. Free school books, free uniforms, free food.
Yeah, the food, food is wild, yeah.
Man, making a lunch box today, it's got to be at least $10 to $15 per lunchbox for my kids here in Australia. And I got 2. School books, school uniforms, now that I go to a private school, fuck me. Their fucking blazers that cost more than my fucking unit and my costume, my suit.
Yeah.
The fucking blazer's only $180. I said to my kid, I said, oi, you better fucking do good in school, because that fucking blazer costs more than my suit. So definitely the economical system, because you pay taxes here, but you don't get as much back. You get Medicare, but when it comes to medical, dental, schooling, important stuff.
The other social systems are more privatized.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. And which sort of kills it, because then you got that hierarchy. Oh, well, I got private health. What do you? Like that kind of mentality. Like the hierarchy and the system is. While Sweden's got that more. Well, hang on. University, fucking, they pay you to go uni in Sweden.
Yeah, they pay you to go. It's fucking wild.
Here, you get a fucking Hexted.
Yeah.
For the next fucking 10 years. Depending on if you get a job and you pay that back. Okay, something that Sweden can adopt for Australia. Queen's birthdays. Holidays. Because I know for a fact the Swedes are hard workers. Like, chucking a sickie, there's no such thing as chucking a sickie. No such thing as RDOs. Because Sweden's too fucking strict. What I noticed when I came to Australia, that Australia is so relaxed, so chilled, so laid back. But Australia is running good. It's running okay.
Yeah, look, we're doing all right
Sweden,
for a small little population in the corner of the world,
Exactly, and it's not as so fucking stuck up and strict as Sweden is.
That's good. That's what I wanted to hear. A bit of the cultural difference, like.
Exactly.
It's easier to get along with Australians than Swedes, I think.
Exactly. I'll say g'day in Sweden. Fuck me. Everyone's like, what?
Oh, I don't know who he is. Can I say hello to him?
Yeah.
No, just pretend I didn't say anything.
Yeah, don't make eye contact.
Yeah.
When I jumped off the airplane in Sydney Airport, first person, oh, g'day mate, how are you? I'm like looking for my phone, my wallet. Mate, what do you want? Fuck me then. I'm gonna have to defend myself here. I don't even know you, and you're asking how I am.
Yeah.
So But you know, I don't, maybe it might be a climate thing where it's nice and warm and everyone's so happy, while in Sweden it's so cold. And I don't know how it is now, but fuck, when I used to live there, it was like 3 days, at least 3 days overcast. You know, maybe 4. And if there's one day that's nice and sunny, the whole community's out, you know, making the most of it from 6 a.m. to fucking 9 p.m. if it was summer, because the sun will go down later at around 9 o'clock, you know. But yeah, the relaxedness needs to be more in Sweden, because everyone's so fucking strung up, too strict. Just take a chill pill. Just relax. Enjoy life. There's more to life than just fucking working overtime. Because I remember I had holidays saved up, and they would frown upon me. They'd be like, "You taking leave? Really? Making me feel like the bad one." I'm like, "Mate, I fucking earned this."
Well, I'd love to see. I would love to talk to you again after you've come back to Sweden and see how much you think it's changed or not. I think that would actually be really interesting, because you know your commentary on like Swedes not taking holidays has definitely not been my experience. You know, Swedes are like, I got this email back the other day. It blew my mind. We're shutting down for the summer. Contact us in September. And this is a company with employees, yet they are taking 2 to 3 months off. And like in my world in Australia, like you'll go out of business if you start doing things like that. So you know, I think you're definitely right that they won't like chuck a sickie the same way, because maybe there isn't as much pressure to, I don't know, but it would be interesting for you to ask you that again after you could come back. So. You know, he's to coming back soon, Mike. You know, hopefully you can do it.
Definitely. Wow. Mate, this was so good. Man, thank you so much, brother. This means a lot.
Man, you have an amazing story, and I think it's cool. And I can tell you that in my little Facebook group here, Australians in Sweden, everyone was sort of sharing around your article. So there is there's a swell of support for you up here with the Australians in Sweden.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much. That warmed my heart, brother.
Hi, big fella.
Man, I can't wait to go back to Sweden. Woo!
Pleasure speaking with you. Enjoy dinner and take it easy.
Thanks, Ryan. Tack så mycket. Tack. Hej då.